The Tunnel and the Truth: Why the Princess Diana Conspiracy Never Dies. Part 1. The Midnight Call. Think back to where you were on August 31, 1997. Or, if you weren't born yet, think about the most shocking news notification you've ever received on your phone. Now multiply that by 1,000. When the news broke that Diana, Princess of Wales, had died in a car crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris, the world didn't just stop, it broke. People weren't just sad, they were confused. How could the most photographed woman in the world, a woman with the best security and the most resources, simply perish in a car accident? It felt too small, it felt too random, and that is exactly where conspiracy theories are born. Today, we're peeling back the layers of the Diana mystery. We aren't just looking at the what, we're looking at the why. Why, 25 years later, do millions of people still believe that the official story is a lie? Why does our brain reject the idea of a tragic accident and insist on a sinister plot? Part 2. The Cui Bono mindset. When something massive and tragic happens, like the death of a celebrity, human beings hate chaos. We hate the idea that a drunk driver and a speeding car can change the course of history. It feels unequal. A huge event deserves a huge cause. In the study of conspiracy theories, there's a phrase used by DIY detectives everywhere: Cui Bono. It's Latin for who benefits. If you look at Diana's death through that lens, you start to see why people get suspicious. At the time, Diana was a firebrand. She had divorced the future king of England. She was dating Dodi Fayed, the son of a man the British establishment despised. She was campaigning against landmines, making the government look bad. She was, in her own words, a threat. If she disappeared, who benefited? The conspiracy detective points to the royal family, the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, or the Deep State. But here is the psychological trap. Just because someone might benefit from a tragedy doesn't mean they caused it. However, for a mind trying to make sense of the grief, murder feels more meaningful than accident. Murder implies a plan. An accident implies that we are all just one bad turn away from the end, and that is a much scarier world to live in. Part 3. The teleological trap. There's a scientific term for how we look at the Paris crash: teleological thinking. This is the human tendency to assign a specific function or a specific purpose to every tiny inconsistency. To a conspiracy theorist, there are no imperfect systems. There is no human error. There are only deliberate actions. Let's look at the anomalies that night in the tunnel. The surveillance cameras. There were 14 CCTV cameras in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. Not a single one recorded the crash. The theory: they were turned off by the assassins to hide the evidence. The reality: most of those cameras belonged to private companies and weren't positioned to record traffic. Paris in 1997 wasn't the high-tech surveillance state it is today. It was a technical failure, not a tactical one. The ambulance delay. It took nearly 2 hours from the time of the crash for Diana to arrive at the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital. The theory: the doctors were in on it. They intentionally slowed down to make sure she wouldn't survive. The reality: France has a different medical philosophy than the US or the UK. They use the stay and play method rather than scoop and run. French doctors believe in stabilizing the patient on site before moving them. They were actually trying to save her, but to an outsider, it looks like a cover-up. The white Fiat Uno. Witnesses saw a white Fiat Uno clipping Diana's Mercedes just before the crash. The car was never found. The theory: it was a backup car used by MI6 to force the Mercedes into the pillar. The reality: in a city of millions, a common car like a Fiat Uno can disappear in minutes. When you add these up, the conspiracy detective sees a mountain of evidence. But the official inquiry, like the massive Operation Paget, sees a series of mundane, tragic coincidences. Part 4. The Letter and the Premonition. One of the most chilling pieces of evidence in the Diana case didn't come from the tunnel, it came from a desk. 10 months before she died, Diana reportedly wrote a letter to her butler, Paul Burrell. In it, she said, "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury to make the path clear for him to marry me." If you're a storyteller, this is the smoking gun. How could she predict her own death so accurately? This is where the line between intuition and paranoia gets blurry. Diana was under immense pressure. She was being followed 24/7. She knew she was disliked by the palace men in gray suits. But the Operation Paget report, which spent years investigating these claims, found a different story. They analyzed her car's brakes. They hadn't been tampered with. They analyzed her health. She wasn't pregnant, as some theorists claimed. The letter shows us her state of mind. It shows us she felt hunted. But does it prove a plot? Or does it just show that a woman in a high-stress situation was thinking of the worst-case scenario? Part 5. The Heroes and the Villains. The reason the Diana conspiracy is so palatable for the mainstream is that it fits a perfect narrative structure: the in-group versus the out-group. The in-group, the heroes, this is Diana and us, the people's princess. She was relatable. She hugged people with AIDS. She walked through minefields. She represents good. The out-group, the villains, this is the firm, the royal family, and the shadowy authorities. They represent the cold, unfeeling establishment. By believing in a conspiracy, we are essentially taking a side. We are saying the world is a battle between the kind-hearted outsiders and the evil insiders. If Diana was murdered, she becomes a martyr. If she just died because her driver was drunk and speeding, she becomes a victim of human stupidity. Martyrdom is a much more powerful story. Part 6. The Ghost in the Machine. We have to talk about the paparazzi. On that night, they were like a pack of wolves chasing the Mercedes. For years, the public blamed the photographers for the crash, but then the narrative shifted. People started wondering, were they really just photographers? Some theorists suggest that the flashbulbs seen in the tunnel weren't from cameras, but from anti-personnel strobe lights designed to blind the driver, Henri Paul. Again, we see the teleological thinking at work. We take a known fact, paparazzi were there, and we give it a more sinister function. The truth is often much darker in its simplicity. Henri Paul, the driver, had a blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit. He was on antidepressants. He was driving over 100 kilometers per hour in a 50 kilometer per hour zone. But for many, that truth is too ugly. It's easier to blame a shadowy assassin than to admit that a beloved icon was lost because of a series of very human, very preventable mistakes.